Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi friends, and I hope you had a wonderful Christmas time if you were celebrating that and whatever other holidays you had going on. This is kind of a weird time now, this time between Christmas and New Year's, and I'm not quite ready to have my final wrap up put out yet, so we're just gonna do a recommendation video to squeeze in here to give you some filler to watch before we get into the rest of the roundup of the year. But something that is very important to me, and I want to make more of a priority in 2025. I know I've rambled on about this a bit, but historical romance is something that's very important to me. It is. And I personally think that for all the different trends that have been going around on TikTok, historical romance has been slept on, okay? It has, I'm telling you. There is a wealth of stories and fun time periods and tales to tell. And I just think that TikTok needs to get on it, okay? Because in the same way that we have made romantasy blow up, in the same way that, Bridgerton had its time, there are so many other things out there besides Bridgerton. And some that I think people might like even more if they wanted to give them a try. So I am more than willing to take on that job of getting the word out there. And in fact, in January, I'm actually hosting a historical romance readathon with some of my friends. It's going to be called The Rake Meets the Blue Stocking Readathon. Now, if you don't know what those terms mean, maybe you need to be reading some historical romance. People that I think historical romance is good for, okay? I think it's really good for people who do like romantasy. I'll tell you why when I get more into this. I also think that in a lot of aspects, especially more old school romance, is really good for people who enjoy dark romance, but maybe don't want to go like full heavy that some do. And I just think that there is plenty to find within there. Also, if you like comedy, if you like it a bit lighter, if you still want there to be some good spice in it, like it all exists within historical romance. And there are some authors out there that are just as talented, if not more so, than some romantasy authors and dark romance authors that we have. So anyway, this is just my pitch to you that I'm going to try to speak to some of you out there who should just really give this a chance, okay? So this is, of course, on my opinion of the best historical romances for Booktok. And also I'm going to call this like historical romances I think Booktok is sleeping on. And I believe I have 12, 13 that I'm going to go through here, and I will go through them a bit quickly. So if there's any of them that you want more details on, I'm happy to give it. I also have an entire playlist with historical romance recommendations. It has not only my videos, but some from other booktubers as well. And I just really think that you should give it a try. And one of the books, well, a couple of them, but a few of the books that I think could be the start of that transition for you, that will have a real good crossover between the two, is going to be Sea of Ruin. And maybe you already saw this recommended on like dark romance area. Now, this isn't a fantasy, but it definitely has fantasy elements because this is a pirate romance. And not only pirates, it is a female pirate romance. There is Bennett, who she has been a female pirate for a few years. There is her wayward husband, whose name is Priest. She's actually really pissed off at her husband, and so she's been kind of running away from him for a little while. And he does catch back up with her near the beginning of this book. We don't fully know what he did that caused her to hit the ocean away from him. And there's also a third player in this game, a pirate hunter named Ashley. And he has a connection to Priest in a way that I, of course, won't spoil for you. But while Bennett is, trying to stay out of the reach of Priest, her ship ends up getting caught by Ashley. Cutler is the name of this British captain who has snagged her, and to spare the rest of her crew, she jumps overboard and allows herself to be caught. And now she is stuck not only on the ship of this pirate hunter, but in his room to keep her safe from the other prisoners that he has in the hold. And he is not going to give her an easy time. He knows all the tricks she might try to win him over, using her body, using her mind, and he is firmly trying to keep her in her place. But Bennett is a wily one, and she's also willing to do anything to save herself and to save her crew. And so again, this doesn't have any fantasy in it, but it does have a treasure hunt. It has a treasure map that's hidden. And her father was also a famous pirate captain until he was killed. And so there is some mysteries that he left behind for her. And do check the trigger warnings for this one because it is a dark romance. It just happens to also be a historical one. Okay, another one that really crosses over to the dark side pretty well. And these won't all be focused that way. I'm just saying I wanted to come at it, as I said, from a few different avenues. If you like, dark fantasy, I said Sea of Ruin might be a good entry. If you like dark erotic romance with power dynamics and a bit of BDSM, I think that The Villain by S.M. LaViolette could be a really good one for you. Now, this is the 5th book in the Victorian Decadence series, and it's also my favorite one, but you can start at the beginning of the series if you want. I believe His Valet is the first one, and that actually involves, I believe that it's a woman undercover as a man who's being his valet. She has some really great different pairings and thruples in this series as well. Their master is actually an MMF relationship going on. But this one, her villain, is actually about our anti-hero is actually a psychopath, and he is a trained hitman and a killer. And he's only in town for a short time, and he's looking for a woman to warm his bed. Now, he normally just hires a lady of the night, as it were, for one night at a time. But our heroine, she happens to be in a dangerous situation. And so Calliope is her name, and she never wanted to be a prostitute for very long, a sex worker for very long, and she was saving up money so she could go to America. And when the brothel that she's working out of goes out of business, literally, she is planning to take her money and make her way somewhere new, but it gets stolen by her roommate, and she's penniless, and now she doesn't even have a place to work. And David, as I said, the anti-hero, he shows up at this brothel to hire someone, and she's the only person there because everyone else has cleared out. And so she offers herself to David. He offers to have her for the night and then ends up offering to have her for the weekend. And she's really kind of trying to wheedle an invitation to be his mistress for the rest of the time he's in town. And David doesn't really do that. Again, he's more of a hire him for one night and move along. But while Calliope is staying with him for the weekend, she ends up winning him over in a game of chess that they play. And at first off, she loses to him while they're playing chess. And he gets upset with her, and he's like, you cheated, but the opposite way. He's like, you let me win. And she's like, well, I find that men get mad when I win. And he's like, no. I don't want to do it that way. If I'm going to win, I'm going to win because I won. So don't play like that. And she's like, okay, if you insist. And she whoops his butt. She whoops his butt at chess. And so he now is intrigued by her mind as well. So he does end up offering her a deal to be his mistress for the duration of his time in town. And he's planning to pay, he's going to pay her a good sum of money to do this. And so if she is able to be his, personal lady for a certain amount of time, she'll have enough money to make a go of it. But during this time, he is very demanding in some of the things he's asking of her. He does like pain a little bit. There is some BDSM mixed in this, as I said. And the dynamics that they have with each other is so interesting. So the other aspect then that I really love about this, and what reminds me of actually some mafia romances I've read before, specifically I'm thinking of Run, Posey, Run is one I really loved, is that when he starts to care about her, he's never cared about anyone before. He's a psychopath. He doesn't feel love. He hasn't had any of those. But he starts wanting to know everything about her. And so he begins this obsession with her where he wants to just pick apart her mind and know everything she needs. And there particularly is one very sweet scene where he finds out it's her birthday and he's never helped anyone celebrate her birthday before. So he tries to ask advice from his housekeeper. And, well, it was pretty adorable. So this is a really good one. Again, has some really dark things in it, some really sexy things. This is like a 4.5 on my spice scale, and not all historical romances go that way. But I also was very emotionally connected to this couple as well, because I love that kind of trope of like a psychopath tries to discover their feelings for a woman, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. Okay, now let's throw in a bit of a lighter one. Now, this one I think fits along the lines of a rom-com-esque. It also is a bit of a retelling. It's got some Beauty and the Beast retelling going on. We're going to run into a few of those throughout this that have some retelling vibes. That's something that's very popular in all genres, right? Like you're going to find that in fantasy, in dark romance, contemporary, you're going to find the retelling aspect coming in. And one of probably the most famous ones in the booktube area, right? I'm trying to bridge the gap over to Booktok if I may be so lucky. But one of the books that is a staple book that people always say, start your journey here. So if you like lighter romances and you like a good marriage deal, you're going to want to try The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare. Tessa Dare in general is one that people will say this is a great starter for you. And that's because it reads very easy. It's not too steeped in historical terms and stuff. It actually has a seamstress in the beginning who she was working on a dress for a lady's wedding, and this lady just up and like the wedding was called off and she never paid for her dress. So our heroine had spent ages working on this beautiful dress and then it was never paid for. And she's tried getting in contact with the man paying the bills and he just doesn't want anything to do with it. So what does she do? She puts on the dress and shows up at his place and is like, hey, you see this? This needs to be paid for. I spent ages working on this and I'm out and you need to pay for it. And guess what? This lord that the woman canceled their wedding for it, he still needs a wife. But he is horribly scarred. He has some injuries that make him supposedly unappealing, though he is that type of guy that one side of his face looks like, you know, some sexy movie star and the other half is just gnarled and scars, right? Some women are just so materialistic, right? So he sees this woman already in a wedding dress and he's like, you know what? Instead of paying you for this dress, how about you wear it and we go get married? Because he's like, I need a bride and I need an heir. And if you will marry me, help me make an heir. Once you have fulfilled that side of it, I will give you an estate where you can raise our child on your own, have anything your heart desires if you will marry me and give me a child. And she's like, you know what? I'm tired of being a seamstress and working my fingers to the bone. I would happily be a duchess. Let me sign up. Then, of course, once they're married, though, and they are working on that second part of the deal, making an heir, it's actually very hard for her to want to keep her nose out of his business. So there's that. Absolutely delightful. I am spending too much time talking about some things, so let's keep going. One I can talk about pretty quickly. So this one I think would be an easy jump for some people because this author is already really famous on TikTok, and I bet you didn't know she had a historical romance, and that is actually Emily Rath. So the first book I actually read by Emily Rath was Beautiful Things, and this is a part of a series that is called, I believe, The Second Sons is what it's called, and the first two books in it are actually a RH, or a Y choose, that does have some sword crossing in it, and it is a woman, and I think there ends up being 3 men in this one, but yeah, there's Beautiful Things, and then I can't remember what the second one is called. Maybe it's the Duke's Son or something. I can't remember, but this would be a really great one to jump into if you like reverse harems or Y choose, and it's an author that a lot of people already love. And before she got, you know, kind of stuck into the hockey niche, or now she does have fantasy romance as well, she wrote some historical romance in there, which is great. Okay, then we have, I mean, this author, I think, writes some of the most romantic stories I've ever read, but she also writes some absolutely bonkers plot, okay? She really does. And one of those is The Wolf and the Wildflower by Stacy Reed. So get it with this one. This one, we have a case of a woman who has been living as a man her whole life. And not because of her choice, but because her mother never wanted to have another kid. She had a very traumatic birth with her child. And so she made her daughter pretend to be a boy so that her husband would think she had given him an heir, and the mother wouldn't have to have another child. So a bit of a twisty way to start this story off for sure. And so our heroine, Jules, has literally grown up as a man her whole life. So do we have to squeeze our eyes shut just a little bit to understand why her mother continued to make her do that and why Jules continued to go along with it? Yes, but that's okay. That's okay. Jules is very much into, what is it that her father does? Sorry. How is it explained in here? But some of like, mind health, like psychiatry, things like that. I can't remember what it's called in here. That's why I stumbled over my words. But she has been able to go to college and work with her father because she has been undercover as a boy all this time, right? And there is the Duke of Wolverton, whose name is James Winter, and he was lost at sea and survived in the harsh wilderness of the Yukon for a decade. Okay, his family thought he was completely lost. So he's been returned to his family, and now he has all these responsibilities. He's a duke, he's supposed to get married, he's supposed to do all these things, and he's been living with wolves for a decade. So his mind is not on, like, being in the city at all. He very much gives Tarzan situations, okay? Let me just put it out there. Definitely is there. And so Jules and her father actually get called in to work with him and, you know, kind of assess his mind and if he is a bit messed up, you know, to help him out. Because if he doesn't prove that he is able to take over his duties as a duke, he could be declared mad and the title could be passed on to someone else in the family. So there's a lot at stake. And one of the cool things about this, though, and something that I really like whenever it shows up, is people have been fooled for literally 20 years of Jules's life that she was a girl. Again, that's wild to me. But the minute that James is in the same room as her, he can, like, smell that she's a woman. Like, literally, that's how it's written. It's almost supernatural that when he is in the same room, he knows this isn't a man. He knows this is a woman. And he's very curious about her and also so attracted to her at the same time. And there's this huge secret, and there's so much that she would be giving up if she were to come out as a woman. And there are some fascinating conversations and some beautiful things in here, because it's like, what if she were to stay as a man? Would he still love her if you know, she was a man? And all the, like, the way that Stacy Reed looks at this is amazing. I love this story. And I love when there's a tale where there's a secret that everyone else overlooks, but the mate of the person, they're intended, like, they can see straight through the bullshit right away. I love that stuff. I love it so much. Moving along, we of course had to have a couple Scottish stories. So here's a quick one here. This is The Highwayman. This one, again, fits the dark romance thing so much. This has aching longing. It has a lost love. It has childhood loves that were cruelly torn apart. We have Dorian Blackwell, who is basically like a mafia boss, if you really like mafia romance, and he has been running the underworld of London for ages. And then we have Farah Lee Mackenzie, who she was in love with a young boy, and he was taken away from her and put into prison when she was young. And so she's called herself his widow for years, even though she's not. They were only like kind of handfast to each other as children, and she hasn't seen him in all this time. And so she ends up getting basically like stolen away by Dorian, the Black Heart of Ben Moore. And he is trying to force her into his life to marry him in exchange for protection. And she's not going to be easily pushed into this. But the more and more time she spends with Dorian, the more and more time some things about him seem to feel familiar. Now, in this, there's also some wonderful side characters. This is the beginning of a whole series that's the Victorian Rebels is what it's called. And I just love these characters. This book is so much fun, but it is very dark as well, and it has some hard topics, but it's fantastic. Another Highlander romance to share is The Taming of a Highlander by Lisa Braden. This is book 2 in the Midnight in Scotland series, and this also ticks the box for a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And this one is about Broderick McPherson, who he was tortured and left scarred. So he does wear an eye patch and he's very scarred and everything, and he's barely human anymore. He was really mistreated and everything. And then there is this English lass, her name is Kate Huxley, and her brother actually lives in the Scottish Highlands, and so she goes to stay with him to escape the marriage mart. And when she's there, she ends up kind of seeing something that she shouldn't, and the only way to keep it a secret is to marry Broderick so she doesn't have to testify against him. And he's very reluctant to do this. He doesn't want to ruin her life by having her be married to this absolute beast that he thinks he is. The thing is, she's pretty into this hot, growly man and would like nothing more than for him to pay attention to her. But she's going to have to win over his broken soul first. So, you know, that's what's going to happen there. Okay, then we have another retelling type. Let's go ahead and share this one quick. Eloisa James actually has a whole series that has retellings in it. She has a Beauty and the Beast one. She has the Ugly Duckling. She has Cinderella. She has the Princess and the Pea. But this one is Theodora Saxby, and she, hold on, let me see this. They get married off to each other, and then he goes away and is gone for a very long time, basically. And when he had left, she was not the prettiest. She was very dour. She was not considered this beautiful woman at all. And when he gets back, now having been basically an absent man for all this time, he wants to win her back over. And she's like, you can't just come back in my life and expect me to fall head over heels for you again. So he's going to have to win her over after the way that he treated her. Okay. Then we have one, this is another one that the author is already pretty popular on TikTok. And I actually found this historical romance series through TikTok because I was following the author who writes BDSM romance. And she also has a line of historical romances. And so she actually sent me a signed copy of this series, and I helped promote the last book in the series. So that's kind of cool. And I love the covers here. So this is the Deception and Discipline series. This is A Season for Treason. And all of these books are just beautiful. So they are actually about this. This one is about a spy master and his niece. So there's Miss Mary Wilson. And so her and her gal friends actually are kind of helping out the spies without them knowing it, because her uncle wouldn't want her to be as involved in this as she is, but she's going to do it anyway. And so Mary is supposed to find a husband this season, and her Aunt Elizabeth is determined that her niece would shine bright. Well, she's just trying to hide herself and do a bit of spying on the side. And so when she catches the eye of the Marquis of Hertford, he finds himself very distracted by her, and she keeps turning up everywhere she shouldn't be. And because he's paying attention to her, he notices that she's doing a bit of spying that she maybe shouldn't be doing, and he just can't help but teach her a lesson to get her to behave and not be doing that so much. So this series was really fun. I binged them all pretty quickly. The audiobooks are really good as well. But there's A Season for Treason, A Season for Scandal, A Season for Smugglers, and A Season for Spies. And she actually has a whole bunch of historical titles as well as contemporary BDSM as well. So in the historical ones, the BDSM is very light, but she does use some pretty interesting toys and sexy things in them that still make them a little bit extra spicy like that. Okay, then we have to mention one that this specifically is a book that to me is a crying shame. It is a shame, and we should all apologize for not giving more attention to this author and her stories. It literally hurts my heart a little bit. But there's an author who writes some of the most powerful historical romances that I've read, and specifically one of hers is in my favorites of all time, and that is Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. So this, cannot tell you how happy I am to have this copy, though it be a little bedraggled. I do have one of the indie versions of it too, because this was originally published by Avon, and now it is actually like like, you can still buy it, but you have to buy like the indie pub version that Beverly published on her own after this went out of print. But gosh, you guys, this book, to have this in my hands makes me so happy. But this one is about, let me just read this one to you so that I don't misspeak, because I love it so much, okay? This one says this. Danger beckons when the notorious Black Daniel is carried, badly injured, into Hester Wyatt's home. There's no question that he will be cared for and protected. Once a slave herself, Hester regularly gives shelter to runaways, yet the man of mystery she now harbors brings greater danger than she even knows. Love awaits. He is Galen Fachon, a member of the unique elite class of pre-Civil War Blacks. Handsome, arrogant, and accustomed to lavish living, he fears he's been betrayed in his work with the underground and wants to move on quickly. Yet the magic healing caresses that flow from Hester's lovely indigo-stained hands tear at his heart and torment his very soul. And even as Hester tries to deny the passion this high-born, bronzed Adonis fires within her, Galen is setting his sights on making her his forever. So, quick summary, Hester is a free slave. Galen, he is a part of a elite pre-Civil War Blacks who he's very wealthy, but he still likes to do his duty to help out his fellow man, and he helps with the Underground Railroad. So Hester is a stop on like the Underground Railroad. So when he has been betrayed and he's injured, he gets brought, and he's, I think, staying in like a secret room under her house where she's healing him and keeping him a secret and everything. And he falls in love with this prickly, strong woman while he is staying there. And she is just like, I don't have time for love. I just got to survive. There's not going to be anything more than this. And Galen is just not going to let that slide. Okay. He is a possessive and protective hero, and watching the lengths that he goes to prove to Hester that he loves her and wants her it's magnificent, you guys. It's so beautiful. Like, this romance, though it does hurt, though it is dangerous and intense because of the lives they're living and the time that it is in the colony, or in the US, not the colonies, in the US, like, it is powerful and beautiful, and I don't understand why people aren't reading this one. Like, it's amazing. I love it so much. All right, just a couple other fun ones here. We have The Lotus Palace by Jeannie Lynn. This one fits more along like the mystery vibes, and this was the first Jeannie Lynn I ever read. Actually, my book club read it. Actually, both of the next two books I'm talking about were done by my book club, and this was fascinating. This one was about Yu Yang, and she's not a beautiful woman. She actually helps because she shadows her mistress until she meets an aristocratic playboy named Bai Huang. And Bai Huang lives in a privileged world that Yu Ying can barely imagine, yet alone share. But as they are thrown together in an attempt to solve a mystery, they both start to dream of a different life. Yet Bai Huang's position means that all she could ever be to him is his concubine. Will she sacrifice her pride to allow her heart? So I believe that the position that he has, he's not allowed to marry outside of his class. I might be how this one was set up. But yeah, there is also a mystery that they're trying to solve that involves her sister, actually. And this was just so interesting. It was very like gut-wrenching to read. This one actually takes place in the Tang Dynasty, China, in 847 AD. So definitely a bit of an older historical than the other ones I've mentioned as well. And it was just so unique and so achingly beautiful. I definitely need to read more Jeannie Lynn because this was amazing. And then the last one, I wanted to pull out a fun one because there are a few historical romances that are actually like fantasy and or paranormal. And one of the authors who writes like a lot of those is Teresa Medeiros. She has a whole section of her books that are all like witches or this one is a vampire or things like that. And they also have like some mystery aspects. And so if you want to actually mix like kind of the paranormal and historical, like this is a great author to do. So this is actually a vampire romance. And in this one, there is Caroline, who's very concerned about her sister Vivian. And she's been keeping company with Adrian Kane, Viscount Trevelyan, the enigmatic nobleman who most people believe is a vampire. But surely that's nonsense. And yet, the brooding gentleman inhabits a dark castle and is never seen in the daylight, embarking nightly on mysterious excursions to who knows where. And from the first moment Caroline encounters the handsome, hypnotically compelling Viscount, she is shaken by a fevered desire for the man that borders on the unnatural. She must know Adrian's secrets, but each step that draws the inquisitive beauty deeper into his shadowy world pulls her closer to a sensuous surrender, for the power of his passion is impossible to resist. Is he man or monster, champion or villain? And will a yearning heart lead Caroline to disaster or to love? So I won't tell you who really is a vampire in here, but I will tell you there is really a vampire in here. Like, this isn't just ladies making stuff up. And the next book in the series actually focuses on more of a vampire too. So highly recommend if you want to cross over that way. So I hope this video kind of made sense. I hope maybe I interested you in it, even if you're not. Although if you're my fellow historical romance lover and you're just looking for some other recommendations, I love you guys too. You're amazing. I'd also love for you in the comments down below to maybe leave some recommendations for historicals that you think book talkers would like. Because who knows? They might see this and maybe we'll catch some people. Who knows? But thank you so much for watching. Again, I hope you're having a wonderful time of year. On the plus side, if you live in the United States, it's getting brighter, longer every day. We have passed the darkest night, the longest night of the year, and it's all uphill from here. So thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.